Thanks a lot. So I'm going to jump in real quickly here, and I'm going to move quite fast because it's. I know you guys are probably anxious to keep moving this afternoon, but just to kick out quickly. So GSN, quick overview. We've got 75 million households on TV, running game shows as well as original programming, and we truly are cross-platform. We've also got the #1 game portal on Facebook. It's a virtual casino as well as casual games. And the #3 game portal on the web as well. So again, here we've got virtual casino, casual games, and also skill-based gaming on the web platform. And then looking at the mobile side, the GSN Casino is a top 25 grossing application on the iPhone, top 20 on iPad, and top 15 on Android. So we truly are cross-platform. And a lot of the context and a lot of the examples I'm going to use in terms of numbers are going to relate to the virtual casino side of the business. So just keep that in mind. So the cross-platform dream that everyone keeps talking about is this writing a game once and then being able to distribute it everywhere simultaneously, and doing that as quickly and seamlessly as possible. And in reality today, that dream really isn't a reality. So it is a broken dream. That there's large downloads associated with trying to do that using Unity. There's and also performance hits. So it's not something that is really easy for you to do technically today. The other side, on the other side of it, it requires a tremendous amount of investment. So you've got technical investments you need to make. Each of the platforms requires specific technical integration and expertise. UI and UX, right? The screen sizes are completely different. The user experiences are completely different. You want to make sure that you're designing for those specific platforms. And then the acquisition and retention expertise you require are all completely different. So you really require teams for each of the platforms that you're building for, and it's not a nominal investment. Sorry. So if you're building games for multiple platforms, basically it's the equivalent. If you're doing this simultaneously from the start, it's the equivalent of basically doubling down before you've even looked at your cards. Why would you really want to do that? Because you could very well end up in a situation where you have a bad hand and you're doubling down on that. So why wouldn't you want to look at your cards first and say, hey, I've actually got a good hand here. And even then, if you're successful on one platform, it doesn't guarantee success on other platforms. So you're still gambling at that point, but at least at that point, you're doubling down with a solid hand. So, when you think about developing games, which comes first? Are you thinking about the game or are you thinking about the platform? And I'm going to argue that you should be thinking about the platform. I think it's critical, especially in this environment, for you to optimize your games and build them from the ground up for each platform. And really, one of the reasons for this is that the space is just so competitive. You're not just competing against, other game companies on each of the platforms, but you're also competing against other social applications and other places that people are spending their time on these applications. So when you think about developing for a platform, what are the things you should be thinking about? And you guys have heard a lot of this stuff coming from all the mobile focus, at the show today. But input devices obviously is incredibly critical. You've got different input devices across, mouse on the computer. You've got the accelerometers. You've got the touch screen. So many different input devices that are broadly different. If you think about the screen sizes, of course we know how different those are. Even across mobile devices, the screen sizes vary widely. And the acquisition and engagement channels. So I'm actually going to talk about and highlight some of the differences in the engagement channels and acquisition channels across the platforms, but absolutely critical that you need to be leveraging, each of the unique acquisition and engagement channels that are available to you on the various platforms. Play sessions, so it's widely different play sessions across the different devices, and absolutely need to be thinking about that in mind as you're designing your games. And the audiences, there's a lot of the talks today, or this week. So Mike Sego actually had a good one going into looking at the audiences. App Annie also had a good one earlier this week talking about the different games that are available and how Facebook is skewing heavily female, heavily casual. On the mobile devices, you're starting to see a more hardcore, heavier male slant in a lot of the games in the top grossing applications. And looking at the competition, there's the top players in the social are not necessarily the top players on the mobile devices, and as well as the top games you're finding there's a huge amount of differences across the two platforms. And finally, they're looking at other services that are available to you. So leveraging GPS, on the mobile phone is something that you're just not able to leverage on other platforms. So looking at Facebook. So Facebook is making huge investments, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Facebook is absolutely a platform that you should be thinking very, very seriously about if you're not building on Facebook. It's one that still is very, very viable. They're making heavy, heavy investments. There's strong alignment between game developers and Facebook, especially since you're paying them 30%, and they're now a public company looking to grow revenues. So it's something that they're making huge investments and making sure to make a viable game platform. And so some of the things to look at, so the bookmarks is just an incredible positioning. You're on the homepage at multiple touch points on a page that hundreds of millions of users are going to on a daily basis, multiple times a day. So, and this is just, this is an example here where you've got multiple touch points on the homepage. You've got the bookmark. We see well over 50% of our daily traffic coming in through the bookmark. It's such a powerful positioning for a user that's comes to your application. They automatically get that bookmark, and then as they continue to use your application, it rises in prominence. And also the news feed. You've got open graph actions, which are being put out into the news feed and receiving prominence based on clicks that they're receiving. And then you've got the Facebook ads. The ability to target users on Facebook is just more powerful than any other ad platform out there, right? You've got very specific things you can target on, not just the basic sex, age, location, but also interest in the games that they're playing. So you can really, lower your cost of acquisition significantly, as well as increase your ROI by targeting more effectively. And finally, you've got other notifications that are coming in. So there's just multiple touch points. But I'm not going to go out there and say this is a viral environment. It's not. It's definitely not that massively viral environment that we saw very early on in the Facebook days. But it is a very viable and very vibrant environment if you are investing in it, if you are leveraging the platform to its fullest extent when you design your games. And more examples here, just so if you look at your profile, this is the open graph actions which are being placed on the profile. There's really interesting things that you can do, and I'm not going to profess that even we are even scratching the surface of doing things as well as we should be doing. And a lot of this here is actually stuff that I feel we should be doing a lot better. So I wouldn't say we're the ultimate example, but absolutely a big believer in what we should be continuing to focus on. So the downside with Facebook is that it is a competitive environment. So these same touch points that you have to get people into your games also show up while people are playing your games. So these, the ads that you can target users on while people are playing your games, your users are going to be targeted by competitors. So and as well as other games that are available to them through cross promotion. So although it's a very vibrant environment and to grow quickly, it's also one where you have to work very hard to continue to engage users and keep them retained. So this, hold on a second here. So this is an example of some of the top apps and kind of the growth curves you see. So you see explosive. This is things like Cityville, Castleville, Farmville, Bubble Island, The Sims Social, and Bubble Witch Saga. And basically what you see similar curves here where you can either see heavy initial promotion, but the scale that you can achieve early on and very quickly is pretty amazing. But what you also see is that you can also peak out very quickly, and it becomes very difficult to hold on and to retain those users. So you have that scale up quickly, but also struggling to retain users as you continue to fight for mind share. So just summing up Facebook and looking at it relative to a .com on its own. So you've got close to approaching 1 billion users now a day on Facebook. There's estimates in around 30% of those playing games or more. 15 million payers in 2011. So there's credit cards on file, which is a lot of the reason why you'll start to see ARPUs increase and the percentage of paying users increase as more and more buyers have their credit cards on file. And again, as I said, the rapid scaling is something that's just a huge advantage, especially relative to the .com. And so what does that translate to? And keep in mind these numbers are ones that are focused on our games, mainly in the virtual casino space. So the cost per paying user is 75% lower on Facebook than we're seeing on the .com. And average revenue per user is 75% lower as well. So you're actually, and that's actually a surprising thing there, because I think that most people would think that you would see much higher, but there's a couple of factors I think that take place there. One is that the conversion of a user to a registered user on the .com is a lot harder to get, but once you do get them, they're paying at a much higher, once you do get them to pay, it's actually paying at a much higher rate. They're much more loyal, they're staying there, and they're paying at a higher rate. But you're seeing a greater volume of payers on Facebook at a much larger scale. And as well as a bigger volume of smaller payers on Facebook at times. So that brings down the average revenue per user. So looking at mobile, you have many of the same touch points like the bookmark when you install an application on mobile. And that's, obviously that's an insanely powerful reminder on a daily basis that this is something that the user can come back to very easily. As well as you also have Facebook. Facebook Mobile is the most widely distributed application across mobile devices. And you should really be thinking about that as a powerful way to continue to distribute your mobile applications on devices across the globe. So basically, the other thing, so the bookmarks again on the right-hand side is the Facebook mobile bookmarks, and then similarly again you have the notifications, and the power of this is you can actually have users on your Facebook Canvas device sending you invites that you can then access on your Facebook mobile device, and then go over to your Facebook games or to your games on mobile. And again, the news feed on the right-hand side. And then you have the other mobile-specific integration points like SMS, email, Twitter, and the all-powerful push notifications. So what does that result in when you look at that mobile versus the .com? So 400 million credit cards on iTunes, and this is one of the primary drivers, I believe, to why ARPUs are higher on a mobile device. Is you have you have a higher percentage of payers converting on mobile devices. It's 400 million credit cards on iTunes, 140 million unique customers per week on Amazon. Those are just staggering numbers in terms of the number of people that can automatically purchase with one click, and they already have their credit cards on file. The acquisition and engagement channels are very similar in the power of the ability to scale rapidly. And the end result, the cost per paying user is 85% lower. So you actually have a lower cost per paying user on mobile than you do on Facebook, and dramatically lower than you do on the .com. And the reason for this, is going to be those credit cards on file and the ease of purchasing for so many users broadly across the mobile devices. And then ARPU as well. So the ARPU is here in this case is 40% lower than the .com, but as you know, it's so it's higher than on Facebook as what we're seeing. But again, lower than the .com, but again, because of the much smaller volume and lower scale on the .com relative to the mobile. So why would you want to do a .com then, in that case? And here's just, taking a look, it's a controlled environment. As I said, that these other devices are very, very competitive. Some of the things that you're seeing in terms of life cycle of a user, the relative life cycle of the user, on a mobile device, you're seeing the shortest relative life cycles. On Facebook, you're seeing longer life cycles, but .coms you can expect to see even longer life cycles, significantly longer than that, because you have less competition. Once a user decides to register on your .com, the chances they're going to stick around is going to be for a longer periods of time is higher, just because they're not being bombarded, right? If they're continuing to come back on their own, it's a very, very powerful user. But then again, they have to be compelled to come back on their own because they're not being reminded, on Facebook. They're not being reminded by that bookmark on their home screen. And there is, but there is limited ability to scale, right? You can't scale up as rapidly because you just don't have the channels and the integration points that you can leverage on an ongoing basis. You've got email, and the effectiveness of email, we all know, is just continuing to drop off, especially as people have more and more things in front of them on a daily basis that they're responding to. And as I said, it's the highest cost per paying user, and also the highest average revenue per user that we're seeing across the platforms. So just a couple quick examples here. So drama, I think, on Facebook. So what they did I think what they did here was a synchronous game using the mouse. And it's a fixed play session where groups basically are able to compete against each other to try and guess the picture. And what they got to was 200,000 DAUs before they launched Draw Something. So if you look at what they did brilliantly with Draw Something was that they did what I believe is redesigning the game. They didn't just say we want to take this game that was doing okay on Facebook and take it out to mobile. They really rethought it from the ground up, and even went so far as to say, okay, it's a different game. We're going to go ahead and change the name, and that was exactly the example of what I'm talking about here, because basically a turn-based game on Facebook would not have worked, and it's still very challenging to get the conversions that you need, as well as the time spans, the quick turnarounds and response rates that you need on the web to really operate a turn-based game, even if you have very, very, very prominent notifications, which really aren't there today on Facebook nor on the web. So push notifications really enabled a turn-based mechanic, and they leveraged that. And what the turn-based mechanic really made it so that people had a strong, strong incentive to log in via Facebook to play with their friends, and the fact that you could play without your friends to start was another brilliant move. Because then you were playing with some guy that you really didn't want to play with, and so you said, hey, I'm going to log in via Facebook and leverage the power of Facebook, sending invites and distributing through the Facebook acquisition channels. The touchscreen also, this picture is actually a guy that I work with, and it's just amazing what you can do with a touchscreen versus a mouse. And the variable play session also had a big impact in the success. And you got to 15 million DAUs. So by not saddling yourself and saying, I've got this game that has to be a cross-platform play, what you did is you enabled yourself to have a blowout hit on the mobile platform. You didn't hold yourself back by saying I had to do this synchronous play across platform, leveraging the same mechanic across two different devices. Just a quick example here of this is Double Down Casino, and looking at how they took the cross-platform play, and they're obviously very successful, top grossing #4, ahead of Slotomania, ahead of us on Facebook, on the Facebook top grossing charts. But if you look at the iPad, the whole thing flips over, and they actually are number 82 on the top grossing on the iPad. And a lot of this, I believe, and this is completely my hypothesis, but I believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that they tried to leverage the cross-platform aspect of leveraging web-based play across a mobile device. And so you get a lot of this loading. This is loading after you log in. You click on any of the slot machines, and again, you're loading, and you're loading 1.2 megs. And then once you get into the slot machine, it's loading again. So you see the experience just isn't as optimal. It hasn't been optimized for the mobile device, and I think that's one of the reasons they may be, not doing as well on mobile as they are on the web. So looking at just quickly what we did with Facebook, with Wheel of Fortune slots, we launched on Facebook in October. We're using Flash, roughly 20 man-months to build it. And then the game was hugely successful, so we took it out to gsn.com and leveraging the same Flash, basically just integrating with a different back end, we basically were able to get that up very quickly in 1 month. And then we went out and said, okay, on iOS and Android, we really want to redesign and also rebuild this game natively from the ground up to get the performance we need. And invested the 10 man-months to do that, and it's been very successful, again, in driving our growth on the mobile platforms. So the other thing to take away is that you do want to try to do cross-platform because there are benefits, and I think you've heard from Game Dwell and others around the benefits of going cross-platform and what that can get for you. So we are seeing 70% more users return when they play on Facebook and mobile. We're also seeing at least an increase of about 10%. It's still early on, but we're seeing an incremental increase currently around 10%. We expect that to go significantly higher when you're playing on Facebook as well as on mobile. So, and you lower your acquisition costs because you're sharing the same user across multiple platforms. You're not acquiring them twice, and you're getting the higher return engagement as well as the higher revenues. So just to summarize, develop games for a platform from the ground up. I think this is the most critical thing you've got to be doing. You've got to be thinking, how can I build these games from the ground up for a particular platform? But think about, if we want to take a cross-platform, let's architect it from the beginning so we can do that, but let's not start customizing for individual platforms yet. Develop for Facebook and mobile to really leverage the ability to scale rapidly. And then port to other platforms after they're successful. In some cases, you may not want to do that. In some cases, you may say, you look at Draw Something, right? They didn't go back to the web and say, okay, now we want to make Draw Something back on Facebook, a turn-based game. And I think a lot of the reason this is, again, hypothetical, but this is kind of my hypothesis, but again, the difficulty of the turn-based gameplay on the web, I think, is something you might want to think about and say, maybe it doesn't make sense to take it back and cross-platform. And then, again, you need to be redesigning the game. just try to put yourself in a position where you say, if I'm going to build the best possible game for this particular platform, what would I change without hindering yourself to think I've got to have this cross-platform play. Obviously, if you can get the cross-platform play after you've kind of made this decision, I think that's ultimately an awesome way to go. But if you can't get there, just change the name. You know, make it slightly different. Make it clear to people that it's a different game on this platform and it's not connected. And absolutely leverage your success on initial platforms to accelerate your growth on others, because it's you know, it gives you a huge advantage to be able to cross-market your audience from, you know, Facebook to mobile, and as well as from the web to mobile, to help drive yourself up the charts and increase your growth overall. So that's it.
We have time for maybe just one question, or if anybody has any questions.
With your guys' experience, is there any technologies that you would recommend that would ease the, for building cross-platform, certain ones that are better across platforms than others? So you may end up with a different UI at the end or a different front end for the end user, but maybe some of the database technology is still the same.
Yeah, so you know, I guess that's probably, my tech guys can probably better answer, but the, you know, Unity is people are starting to use Unity, people are starting to use Adobe Air, you know, we're looking at both. So in terms of leveraging those, we currently use Unity, but we're not using it in a cross-platform way. We're just kind of using that specifically for our native mobile applications at the moment. But you know, my understanding is that those two are the kind of the leading contenders for building once and being able to leverage them across platforms. There's still some work that is required to actually get them across platform, but you're cutting down the time significantly. I mean, currently what we're doing is we develop for Flash on the web, and then we develop in Unity on mobile, and then but we're not leveraging them to kind of output cross-platform yet. Cool.
Well, great. Thank you so much.